Right now, a fleet of NASA spacecraft are turning their attention to an unusual object speeding through our solar system.
It's not a natural object because we don't see a beautiful tail behind this object the way we see around Comet.
The night was silent over the Atacama Desert. Above, the stars burned cold and bright, stretching endlessly across the black expanse of space. But one of those points of light was not a star at all. It was a visitor, a traveler from beyond the stars, an interstellar object known as 3I Atlas. For months, it had captured the attention of every astronomer on Earth. Now, it was about to reveal something no one was prepared to see. Inside the James Webb Space Telescope Operations Center in Baltimore, a soft chime broke the quiet. A technician leaned closer to his monitor, eyes narrowing. "That can't be right," he muttered. Across the screen, faint signatures were appearing, thousands of tiny blips moving in formation behind 3I Atlas. At first, they looked like background noise, just random fluctuations in light. But as the telescope continued tracking, the pattern became undeniable. By 2:37 a.m., the James Webb Telescope had recorded over 3,000 small objects following directly in the wake of the interstellar comet. Each one was faint, fast, and oddly synchronized, traveling along the same trajectory as 3I Atlas, as though in escort formation. The call went out immediately. Within minutes, NASA's Deep Space Network was online, cross-referencing the Webb data with radar and infrared readings. The signals matched. These weren't artifacts or sensor ghosts. Something real, something massive, was trailing 3I Atlas through the inner solar system. Dr. Evelyn Harker, who had led the response to the original signal from the comet months earlier, was pulled out of bed by a single phone call. When she arrived at the lab, the control room was alive with urgency. Engineers spoke in hushed voices. Screens flickered with orbital models. And there, on the central display, a red line traced the path of 3I Atlas. Behind it, a cloud of thousands of smaller points followed like a swarm of steel insects. By sunrise, the discovery had leaked. Major news outlets were reporting that the James Webb Space Telescope had detected thousands of objects moving behind an interstellar comet. The headlines blared across the internet. Alien fleet detected. NASA scrambles to explain swarm following 3I Atlas. Theories multiplied faster than data could be analyzed. In the hours that followed, NASA held an emergency press conference. Cameras flashed as Administrator Reynolds took the podium. Her expression was calm, but her voice trembled slightly. "At approximately 2:37 this morning," she said, "the James Webb Space Telescope recorded a large number of small objects following in the trajectory of 3I Atlas. At this time, we cannot confirm their nature. They may be debris, natural fragments, or other phenomena. We are investigating, but behind closed doors, the tone was very different." At the Pentagon, the US Space Command convened under classified status. Generals, analysts, and intelligence officers pored over the same data, searching for any sign that these objects could pose a threat. The swarm appeared to be accelerating slightly as it neared the Sun, keeping precise distance from one another. To trained military eyes, it looked like a fleet. Disciplined, coordinated, intentional. In a quiet corner of the room, an Air Force colonel whispered to his superior, "If those were drones, sir, that would be tactical formation flying." By midday, the swarm had grown clearer. High-resolution imaging from Webb revealed faint luminescent halos around several of the objects, energy emissions too uniform to be random. One of the analysts zoomed in, enhancing the contrast. The image that emerged froze the entire room. It wasn't just light reflecting off rock. It was structured, angular. Some of the objects appeared hexagonal, others perfectly spherical, each with geometric symmetry impossible for natural formation. A silence fell over the control room. No one wanted to be the first to say it, but the implication hung heavy in the air. These weren't fragments. These weren't meteoroids. They were machines. By evening, the James Webb Space Telescope recorded something unprecedented. As the swarm passed through the heliocentric plane, the smaller objects shifted position. They rearranged themselves into a massive spiral pattern stretching thousands of kilometers across space. It was precise, symmetrical, and deliberate. The spiral tightened, its core pulsing with synchronized bursts of infrared light. Those pulses repeated every 53 minutes and 42 seconds, the same rhythm as the mysterious signal that 3I Atlas had emitted months earlier before going silent. It was back, and now it was amplified across thousands of synchronized objects. NASA's communication systems lit up. Within hours, patterns emerged. Prime numbers, binary sequences, geometric constants, the same signatures that had once been called the first interstellar signal. The realization hit everyone at once. 3I Atlas had never been a lone traveler. It had been a harbinger, a scout. And now, what followed was its fleet. At 2 a.m. Eastern Time, the President authorized a joint task force with NASA, the Department of Defense, and the European Space Agency. The mission was simple but terrifying: determine if the swarm posed a threat to Earth. The Pentagon's space surveillance network tracked the swarm's velocity. It was slowing, gradually decelerating as it approached the inner solar system. That was impossible under natural physics. It meant propulsion, intent. Simultaneously, the James Webb Telescope picked up faint heat signatures from the swarm. Some of the objects were warming up from within, emitting energy without any visible chemical reaction. "They're activating," whispered one scientist. By dawn, radio telescopes across the planet detected something new. Background noise across multiple frequencies rising in unison. The swarm was transmitting. The signal was broad, enveloping the Earth's radio spectrum like a digital curtain. For several minutes, every satellite on the day side of Earth experienced minor interference. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. NASA responded immediately. Using the Deep Space Network, they transmitted a return signal, a sequence of binary pulses mirroring the pattern, a message of recognition. Then they waited. 2 hours later, the swarm answered. Infrared sensors recorded the spiral formation shifting again. Thousands of objects began to reorient, their energy signatures aligning into a new shape, one unmistakable, even from millions of kilometers away. It was a sphere surrounded by smaller orbits, a solar system, our solar system. Within minutes, a beam of light emerged from the swarm, directed straight toward Earth. It wasn't a weapon, it was a communication laser, a perfectly coherent signal hitting multiple satellites at once. The encoded data flooded NASA's servers. AI decoding teams worked non-stop for 8 hours before the first image appeared. It wasn't a threat, it was a message. The data rendered a three-dimensional projection of a planet, Earth, surrounded by rings of mathematical equations and symbols that no one could yet decipher. At the center of those equations was a single sequence, 3I Atlas. Over the next 24 hours, the swarm began to change trajectory. The collective shifted its orbit to avoid entering the inner solar system. It was as if the fleet had completed its mission. Then, slowly, it began to ascend away from the sun, back toward interstellar space. But before it left, every one of the small objects emitted one final synchronized flash. It lasted exactly 10 seconds. That flash, when decoded, contained a final transmission, a burst of compressed data so dense it took NASA weeks to unpack. What they found was staggering. Hidden in the data was a map of nearby star systems, each marked with orbital paths, atmospheric compositions, and planetary data. One system was highlighted in blue. It wasn't ours. It was 40 light-years away, in the direction of Lyra, the same region from which 3I Atlas had come. By the time the analysis was complete, the swarm was gone. It had accelerated beyond detection range, fading into the black void from which it came. Only the James Webb Telescope had recorded its final light signature, a glow that shimmered for hours, like embers dying in a cosmic fire. NASA issued no further public statements. The official explanation claimed the swarm was a natural debris field produced by 3I Atlas fragmenting under solar pressure. But the data was quietly sealed. Access required presidential authorization. The public never saw the maps, the pulses, or the light patterns that formed Earth's image. Weeks later, however, a classified recording leaked online, a short audio file of the decoded signal from the swarm's final transmission. When played, it was hauntingly simple. A deep, rhythmic pulse, followed by a faint synthetic tone that rose, lingered, and then faded into silence. Those who heard it said it sounded like a voice exhaling. Now, months after the swarm vanished, a strange new reading has appeared on the James Webb Telescope once again. A small cluster of faint infrared objects has been detected near the edge of the Oort cloud, moving slowly toward the inner solar system. They are arranged in the same formation as the 3I Atlas swarm. NASA has yet to release a statement. But within the scientific community, whispers have begun to spread. The Scout came first, the fleet followed. And now, perhaps, something larger is on its way. As the James Webb Telescope stares into the darkness once more, a question hangs heavy over humanity. If 3I Atlas was a messenger, then who or what is it that sent it? And when they finally arrive, will they come in peace?